minimizing charisma, maximizing intelligence, shooting someone in the crotch with a cannonball, thrust, propulsion. It's science-y.
Why you always gotta be blowing my spot up like that? There are my runes. There they are. I'm not mad. Science needs art and art needs science. They both need each other to function properly.
There are ways to figure out what the paper is really saying.
And then I'm ready to get on Twitter and yell at people about doing their own research on...
Chat. Some people, like Lutman23 in the chat right now, says, the intro is too long. Chat. Chattathan Taylor Thomas. Some say that you've never actually even seen the entire intro, and that the intro could end at any time, keeping you perennially on your toes. Hello. I'm your scienceman for today, Kyle Man. Today in office hours, as we're wont to do, spend the next hour or so exploring and explaining everything underneath the stars and beyond. In particular, today we are talking about the dogs of Chernobyl. Something that I'm intimately familiar with, as we will get to. Long story short, I went to Chernobyl. I came back and made a video about the dogs there. We raised a bunch of money for them. And in that video, we were talking about the research that was soon to come out. The first research about a population of mammals at Chernobyl. And today, well, earlier this week, that research has come out, and today we will go through it to see what we can learn about this incredibly interesting population of puppets. And we're doing that at the facility, of course. Chat, welcome. Chat, for the next hour or so, we'll be talking to you, answering questions, getting sciencey. If you want to join me here at the facility, you can always go to patreon.com/Kyle Hill to join the facility today. Behind the scenes, private Discord, private images of me. Help us fix that light. Oh, my timing. Incredible. Incredible. Of course, if you want to continue on this conversation, you can go back to the main page. You can like this channel. You can like the gaming channel, where we're hopping off right after this stream for 3 hours of robot mommy domination. And if you really, really, really want me to see something, super chat here on YouTube. I can't promise that I'll get to everything that I see or everything that you donate, but trust me, it all goes towards our nerdy mission. And that nerdy mission today involves talking about the dogs of Chernobyl. How's everyone feeling today? I'm feeling pretty good. I'm decided to do a double duty stream. We'll be here for an hour, and then we'll go right over to the gaming facility for a couple hours. Whoa, Douglas Lewinsky with the 75. Kyle, after following you for years, seeing all the videos, I've finally reached a point where I can super chat. Soon I hope to become a member of the facility and have a lot of video ideas. Love your content. Changes my life. Keep strong. Says Douglas. Douglas, you honor and humble me. Can't wait for you to join us. I get a lot of good ideas for videos from facility members. It's true. I think the next Half-Life history came from one of our most successful chatters in the Discord. I couldn't think of the right word for it. Eric with the 22. Morning, Kyle. Love your Half-Life series and general content. Keep up the great things you do for science education. Hey, I'm just a guy. Question. Will breeder reactors become a thing again, and any good books to recommend? Read the latest What If 2 by Randall Monroe if you haven't. Dark Jester, happy to see you here. Rapscallion Queen with the Australian 50. Appreciate it, Rapscallion. Been following this channel for well over a year and finally able to simp for Science Live. Oh, wait, I have to make this sound Aussie for you to read. Thanks, mate. Keep it up. Chad, as you know, I'm always trying to improve my Australian accent for no particular reason. Rapscallion Queen with the $50. Been following the channel for well over a year, and finally able to simp for science live. Oh, wait, I have to make this sound Aussie for the read. Thanks, mate. Keep it up. Rapscallion Queen, you legend. Love to have you here. Love to have you here at the facility. Chat. Any chance of you doing more in-person talks or lectures at any time? We miss you in Madison, says Alan Sturm. I remember Madison. It's hard to travel and speak with the pandemic going on. It sounds like a fake Jersey accent, says Uniballer. Uniballer. It's time to get learnt. It's time to get learnt, Uniballer. Have you ever visited Australia and tried out the accent? How did it go? Says Jordan Crozier. No, I'd love to go to Australia, but I have an Australian friend, another host performer. Her name is Maud Garrett. Some of you may know her, and she's quite Australian. And I tried it for her, and she said it was, quote, pretty bloody good. So, Pernumble Mine, MM Ward, I was hoping you'd ask this again. Question, what do you think about the pigmentation changes in Chernobyl frogs? Now, there's a misconception about Sir Winner Ryan. Thank you for the small simp for science, as I say, for the holidays. The Chernobyl frogs, there was a misconception about that article that was going around. The articles made it sound like in response to radiation, these wooded frogs in the woods of Chernobyl were increasing the amount of pigmentation in their skin, i.e. getting darker, as a direct adaptation to radiation. Now, why would that work? That would work because what pigment in your skin does is absorb sunlight. That's why the cradle of humanity, Africa, hundreds of thousands of years ago, that's why people's skin closer to the equator, where people get more sunlight and it's hotter, have darker skin. But that is not what happened at Chernobyl. What happened in Chernobyl was that, as in, I have hair everywhere, as there is in any population, there is variation. I look very different from you, probably. You know, I'm handsome and you're beautiful. You know, we look different. Some might say. There's variation. So in this population of frogs in Chernobyl, and I actually recognize exactly where this photo is taken behind me, by the way. So in this population of frogs at Chernobyl, some were naturally darker. There was a known variation in the population of these frogs. Some were lighter and some were darker. Okay. So what actually happened, what the study was actually saying that wasn't reported very well, and this is a science communication problem, is that the radiation, the studies are saying that the radiation helped as an additional selective pressure on the frogs. And in response, the ones that were already darker were passing along their genes more often, thereby making the population slowly darker as a whole. So, okay, that's different, right? That's a little green, little toad boy, frog guy. No actual distinction biologically between frogs and toads, by the way, chat. That's very different than a nice green little frog guy. Chernobyl explodes, and then the population darkens. That's not what happened. Inside of the normal population, there was already darker frogs, and then being already darker, plus the selective pressure of ambient radiation and contamination, slowly starts to select for that trait in the population. So that's different. Okay? Just want you to know. Michael Skinner, welcome. Derail says, you're beautiful. Derail. Thank you. So on to the puppies and dogs in Chernobyl. If you're looking at the chat, you'll see we have pinned at the top our Dogs of Chernobyl documentary / fundraiser, where I went to Chernobyl. I met these puppies. I know exactly where this photo was taken. This is that moss on the ground and that concrete behind them is one of the abandoned cooling towers at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The echo in there is insane. It's so interesting. Anyway, they're inside of one of the cooling towers, and these dogs live everywhere in the plant, in and around the Chernobyl exclusion zone, or the CEZ. What was I going to say? Right. So I came back and I made a video about these puppies, and we raised $54,000 for these puppies, which will ensure that this small but very intriguing population of animals will be taken care of to the best of their ability by the CFF, the Clean Futures Fund, who we worked with on all of this. We raised $55,000, which for a population of animals less than 1,000 goes longer than you think. Josh says, been watching you since I was in college. Now I'm in med school. Keep up the great work. Josh, you're making me feel old. Do you know what else made me feel old the other day? I was depressed, so I sat down. I closed one of my facility blast doors. I sat down, crisscross applesauce, cross-legged, and decided to build a Lego set. I hadn't built a Lego set in a very long time. It took me about 3 hours. My hips were so sore from sitting like that the next day that I was limping for an entire day. Evil Fandango says that money is totally going to get stolen. Evil Fandango, I went through a 3-month process of verifying the charity, the people at the charity who I know personally, and verifying the charity through YouTube, through Google, officially as a 501c3 nonprofit organization. I can guarantee you that it's not, because the check is already out to them and they already have it. Evil, one chance. That was your one chance. Okay. So, Dark Jester. You can still donate to the fundraiser if you want. It'll just stay on that video. Anyway, chat, in that video I was saying that we didn't know about the genetics of these puppies, how their genes were being affected by being in an environment like this. Now, the mechanism of that is ambient radiation. We're talking about fission products that were released into the atmosphere when Chernobyl reactor number 4 exploded in April 6th, 1986. The fission products are is the natural product of the fission process that we use for nuclear energy. Usually those are contained, and that becomes nuclear waste, which is disposed of safely, much more safely than you think. But if those fission products are being produced and the whole thing explodes and then a fire burns in the location for 10 days, that's what released all of these fission products into the atmosphere. And now, in many, many, many hundreds of square miles, let me see, what's the actual... The CEZ exclusion zone is now almost 3,000 square kilometers, and that is because primarily cesium-137, a fission product, is in the environment basically everywhere. So Winter Rain says, "What Lego set was it?" It was the Lego Tall Neck. It was really cool. Do they have a higher risk of cancer? Says Sean. We're getting to that. So there's ambient cesium-137 everywhere. When fission products get released into the atmosphere, they can combine with any available atoms. They can be taken up by the moss here. And in fact, when you take a Geiger counter, that's what you see. And this is a sidebar, but it's very interesting to go through a radioactive environment and see how it actually moves through the environment. Is it everywhere? Or is it collecting somewhere? For this moss in particular, because it draws up a lot of nutrients from the ground and concentrates it in one location, these patches of moss are much more radioactive than other patches around it. So you can get as complicated as you want with this stuff, chat. But now the first study about these puppies and dogs is out from 2 of the scientists who are part of the CFF, who we work with and who I've talked with before we made this video. Here's before the NSC was put in place in 2017. You have dogs just running around the area freely. So, the name of the study and the purpose of the study, respectively: Dogs at Chernobyl, Demographic Insights into Populations Inhabiting the Nuclear Exclusion Zone. Now, what this study is aiming to do is first and foremost identify the genetics of these dogs with relation to other dogs in other areas. Now, why are they doing that? They're doing that to ensure that the dog, or to see, like scientists would do, to check whether or not the dogs of Chernobyl are actually genetically distinct enough to be studied as a population that can tell us something, right? Because it could be the case, for example, that these dogs are moving around the exclusion zone and interbreeding so much, and maybe even leaving this part of the country, that any genetic damage done by the ambient contamination could be more or less hidden or overwritten by larger genetic changes from interbreeding populations. Now, if it sounds complicated, that's science for you. But what the study is trying to do is ensure, or check, rather, that the dogs of Chernobyl have, what they say, the scars of these changes on their DNA. Like I said, they may not. And that would be interesting. It's interesting either way. If they don't have any genetic damage that you can see, oh, well, okay, well, maybe they have an adaptation that they've developed over the last 37 years. Maybe that adaptation can tell us about our own genetics when we go to space or into a hazardous nuclear area, something like that. That would be interesting. It would also be interesting if we could indicate that these pets, like I say in the video, are in fact descendants from the disaster from 1986 that has stayed more or less in the same place and acquired genetic damage that can tell us something. Chef, yeah, I just talked about the frog Chernobyl study earlier in the video. Just scroll back a couple. So, this is the first characterization of a domestic species in Chernobyl. And I think it's the first mammalian species. No, I think there was moles done, but large mammalian species. And why that's interesting to study in a place like Chernobyl is that dogs, especially dogs, are used as a model for human cancers. And so if we could study these dogs, maybe their genetic damage or their resistance to genetic damage could tell us something about how to fight cancer on our end. It's very possible. But this was kind of lucky, the scientists say, because it's very hard to study large mammals in the exclusion zone. Because the other large mammals in the exclusion zone are moose and wolves and bears. And a population of wild horses, one of the last truly wild population of horses. And catching them with a limited budget and a couple of scientists is basically impossible. Think about it. I don't think you want to chase a wild horse through a contaminated area. That sounds like a recipe for additional disaster. Hey, Cy Kyle, says Liz with the 10. My tiny human Alex helped grandma make cookies because cooking is science you could eat. What's your favorite cookie? Will you ever be able to adopt a Chernobyl dog? They look so cute. A good chocolate chip cookie is hard to beat. Gooey, out of the oven. Kind of breaks apart. You used to be able to adopt these dogs. A handful, a dozen or so dogs have been adopted in the U.S., but they don't do that anymore. I forget the exact reasoning why. A big reason why is that Ukraine has been a lot more stringent about removing possibly radioactive material from the zone and from the country. And that is part of the video. That's actually probably going to be one of the last videos we release about Chernobyl. People taking stuff out of the exclusion zone exploded as a problem after the Chernobyl miniseries on HBO. I believe the factor was 1 to 2,000 tourists a day. I mean, it makes money for the plant, for the workers, for the nearby population, that kind of thing. But if these people are like, "Hey, HBO's cool," and they're picking up stuff that they don't know is radioactive or not, putting it in their pocket, moving it around, that's an actual health hazard. Anyway, can you pet the puppies? Yes. And I did. Very much so. So, do the dogs of Chernobyl represent a distinct genetic population that we can learn from? Not a distinct breed. The scientist told me not to say the word breed, because breed means artificial selection, no breeding outside of that breed, etc., etc. And they said dog breed people get pretty crazy about that kind of thing. So what they did was sample over 300 dogs, and they got their blood from different locations. And I should say, when I said it was hard to study mammalian effects in the zone, you can't catch wolves or horses without significant resources, which people don't have. So in 2017, when the CFF started their spay and neuter program in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, because the population of dogs was exploding, actually, over 800 and growing, the scientists that joined the CFF saw this as a great opportunity. It's like, well, if you're going to be catching these dogs anyway, let's just also take blood samples. So it was volunteer veterinarians and scientists working together to make this study, which is very cool. So what they were looking at is, so you see sampling ranges here. We have Chernobyl City, we have the Chernobyl nuclear power plant area, in which is a spent fuel pool area. This is Pripyat, the city directly outside of Chernobyl, 2 miles. It's where all the workers lived. So this is the most contaminated zone, which you see here, again, by the cesium-137 deposition, which is measured in kilobecquerels per square meter. So it's not measured in curies, or else this number would be way too small, because curies reduces becquerels by a couple, like a trillion or whatever. No, it's way more than that, like 10 to the 30 or something, because there's a lot of radiation. Anyway, you can see that what you'd expect, which is the redder areas, which indicate more cesium per square meter, are in the directly near the power plant, by Pripyat, by the spent fuel pool. Outwards here, this area is showing Silvudich, which is 45 kilometers away. It's where all the workers live now who still work at the power plant. And that's where I stayed for a week while I was there. And then this is Chernobyl City, which was basically abandoned, but now has about 500 people in it. So this is where they got all the dogs from. When you look at a study, any kind of scientific study, N usually denotes population. So this is how many dogs were from this zone, this zone, this zone, etc., etc. And the main, or one of the main figures from the study is here. So let's make sure we can see this. So using genetic analysis, they were looking at 2 different genetic components, collections of genetic data, PC1 and PC2. PC1 and PC2. Stop it. And they were using this data and plotting it against other dogs. So dogs in Chernobyl from other areas, and then also purebred dogs themselves. Boop. Okay. So in a graph like this, what you're going to see, if the populations are genetically very similar, is that they're plotted on the same line, basically. If it's 1-to-1, it's going to have one slope. It's going to have a nice linear slope. You see what I'm saying? So what we can see here specifically, look right here, Chernobyl nuclear power plant dogs, all clustered right here, more genetically distinct than the dogs of Chernobyl City, which are further out from the highest levels of contamination, further again out from free breeding dogs with no pure breeds. Yeah, these are all genetic markers, Chef Julie. I don't understand all the intricacies of this, but this is basically just looking at different data sets of the genetics based on known components. Like purebred dogs have known markers, right? So purebred dogs here, separate from Chernobyl dogs, separate from free breeding dogs, separate from nuclear power plant dogs. Now, here is another interesting question now. Wait. Oh, can you hear my fan? It's hot in here. Sorry. I might be outside. You don't know me. So now here's another interesting question. Are the dogs that are genetically distinct enough here in the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, are they in fact anyone see Physics Girl's video yesterday? Says Adam Evans. Yes. Diana is doing very poorly. She has long COVID and now a symptom or symptomology associated with long COVID where she has trouble eating. She can't really move. She can't really think or talk to anybody. She's been to the ER in the last 2 times in like the last 2 weeks. And the best way to support her right now would be to go to, not to say prayers, Motorhead, no, to go to her Patreon, which will be a stable source of income for her and her husband if you want to support them. Yeah, she has been hit harder than anyone I know who hasn't passed. So her friends and I are all very, very worried. But if you want to support her, Patreon's a way to do so, as Simone says in the video. So there's an interesting question here, chat. Do these Chernobyl power plant dogs that are genetically distinct, that might be able to tell us something, actually descendants of the dogs that were there? The dogs that were left behind, attempted to be culled, but then escaped some of the capture by the Soviet Union. The ads every 2 minutes are great, says Peterson L. Yeah, I enabled something that I didn't. It's a test feature with ads. I'll remove it after this video is done live. Anyway, are these actually descendants? Well, that's hard to say, and the paper says it's still technically uncertain, but you can also overlay the genetic markers of dogs that have been in that area for a very long time. So, for example, Russian and Ukrainian breeds, like German Shepherds, have been in that area of Ukraine for many, many decades. Who's trolling? Yeah. No, let's not. We don't have to get into a COVID discussion, but I can assure you, she's not faking it. Don't even. Next person to say anything like that gets bopped. Anyway, you derailed me with your craziness. Okay, so Eastern European Shepherd dogs and German Shepherd dogs have been in this area of Ukraine for a very long time, and you plot this on the same plot, and look what kind of plotting you plot. Overlays directly right here with the Chernobyl nuclear power plant dogs. And the Slavutich dogs, the area that's 15 kilometers away, closer to pure breed dogs, like you'd expect if they were just buying, like if people in Slavutich were bringing new pure breed pets into the area. And the problem would be if you had pure breed pets that are constantly coming into an area, interbreeding with the Chernobyl dogs, you could lose some of that genetic information that maybe was stamped upon them by the disaster, right? So, also there was something interesting also in the study, which was most dog genetic assumptions are based around the fact that a population of dogs will interbreed willy-nilly. But what they found is that, in fact, there were, even in a small, relatively small area, there were many actual distinct families of dogs that would be that separated themselves from other populations of dogs. So the assumption is that they would just all interbreed, but no, it got more granular than that, where there's families of dogs sticking genetically, so we speak, to their own. Will the dogs become crab? Says Madfish. Unlikely. About as likely as you getting wings. So from the study, which has a lot more data, when you read a study like this and you want to know what the real nuts and bolts are, well, you go to the methods. But when you want to know what the real conclusions are, you go to the discussion. We present the first genetic analysis of domestic dogs affected by a nuclear disaster, establishing that populations of semi-feral dogs have likely populated the nuclear disaster site in the decades since the accident. They're living in, breeding around highly contaminated areas such as the Chernobyl News Safe Confinement Structure, spent nuclear fuel areas. I gotta find one thing I was looking for. The idea that the dogs living in the greater Chernobyl area are descendants of the pets left behind by evacuees remains uncertain. Our findings indicate that the CEZ population shares ancestry with shepherd-related breeds, perhaps suggesting that they descended from the same, likely small, founding population of dogs that remained after the disaster and the subsequent culling. Evidence of genetic isolation within the CNPP population, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant population, suggests that the group is most likely to represent the original dog population that inhabited the region before or immediately following the disaster. The relative isolation and discrete genetic makeup of the CNPP dogs and their population are key factors in the characterization of this population and design of all future mapping studies. So, the Chernobyl dog population has great potential for informing environmental resource management studies in a resurging population. Its greatest potential, however, lies in understanding the biological underpinnings of animal and ultimately human survival in regions of gross and high continuous environmental assault. So, chat, from the first study of the puppies of Pripyat, it sees that the dogs closest to the power plant that live, play, and breed around the power plant seem genetically distinct enough to, in future science, tell us something very interesting about mammals interacting with each other, living their lives in a highly contaminated environment. And that's just I don't care who you are. That's interesting right there. If you, Denizen of the Ages, with the 5, if you could adopt a hypothetical atomic pupper, which pupper specific traits would you love to see enhanced on your super pupper? Well, first of all, I'll post the link to the study in the chat right now. First of all, these dogs aren't super powered. As we said in a video, the only thing radiation is likely to do is give you some damage, like a cancer. It doesn't seem like the dogs have a lot of radiation damage or cancers or sickness when you go there and you see them. In fact, inbreeding and producing inbreeding related disease is much more, like hip dysplasia is much more of a harm to the dogs right now. So they're not super powered. But if I had a puppy and it was super powered, it's gotta glow in the dark. Duh. This is good info for those who live in Ohio, says Whiffin, deliberately misunderstanding me for probably a political reason. Leave it up. Don't nuke them. Leave it up. But Whiffin, you know, like, a chemical spill and a nuclear reactor exploding 37 years ago is not quite the same. It's super awesome. Humans will one day live on planets so good, says Neo Wonderboy. I mean, that's what I said at the beginning of the stream, right? There could be marks in these dogs or other animals' genetics that indicate how a mammal adapts to ambient radiation that could tell us what we're in store if we live, what is in store for us if we live in a high radiation environment, like say another planet with less of an atmosphere, less of a magnetosphere, traveling through space for long periods of time would suggest suspect suscepts which you know what I'm trying to say. Suspects? Subjects! Holy shnikes. Been a couple years since you heard that, huh? Donatello Dragon with the 199. I'm more of a car person myself. I'm gonna guess that since the R and the T key are next to each other on my keyboard, that you meant cat person. I want super howls, says Fire Arrow 31. I don't think you do. Oh, do these dogs have a higher likelihood of getting sickness and diseases, says Louis Mierka. I don't know. Again, right now, the main thing affecting the dog seems to be genetic effects from inbreeding of a small population. And to affect your immune system in the way that you are suggesting takes, like, high doses of radiation. Like doses of radiation that kill off your white blood cells, which then makes you more susceptible to infection and et cetera, et cetera. And your wounds don't heal or close and that kind of thing. The ambient level of radiation in where these dogs are living is not that high. It's not even twice as high as where I'm sitting right now. The issue is that there's still bits of cesium-137 everywhere. So my answer to the question is that the population as a whole isn't being subjected to crazy doses. There could be a dog or another animal that ate something with a especially hot fleck of dust, but that's not the large, the bigger picture here. Remember, these dogs have been a semi-stable population for 40 years in this area. I hope this donation can get us closer to the long-standing question, who's a good dog? Says Conan with the 5. Look, all dogs are good dogs. I do have a hot take, though. Not so hot anymore. It's kind of trendy now. Some dogs shouldn't exist. They exist in pain because of us. Like French bulldogs. Upwards of 90% of them have to be born by cesarean section because their heads are too big, because they are artificially selected with large heads, meaning that if human intervention stopped today, the breed would die out, and they have all these problems with their breathing, their nasal passages. They're highly susceptible to these breathing issues. I think it's unethical to continue breeding them in that way. This is a glow-in-the-dark pupper research donation, says Dennison of the Ages with the 5. That or Kyle axolotl hybrid research. What's interesting about the axolotl is that they are neonatal. They stay in a natal state. They stay babies. And in staying babies, we think, the genetic pathways that tend to turn off in humans with regards to healing stay turned on in axolotls. More or less now extinct in the wild, but live as a population in labs and pet cellars and that kind of thing. and so that staying natal gives them an incredible regenerative capability. You can cut off an axolotl's arm any number of times and it will grow back without scarring or damage. You can remove an eye, it will grow back. You can scar or lesion some of its brain, and that part of its brain will grow back. Insane. Analogous. Now, I want to be super clear about what I'm about to say. Don't do this. But you can cut off the end of a newborn's finger, a newborn human, and it will grow back. That ability will stop when they get older. I'm not saying do that. As the owner of the Buff Baby Fighting League, I would never do that. Whoa, we got Wishy Washy with a $100 donation. First donation, appreciate it, Wishy Wishy. Hey Kyle, I love your content. I've been watching you for about a year thanks to the Trash Taste shoutout. Collab. Unrelated to science, but what kind of music do you listen to? Have you heard of wave music? And if not, you should check out some of my stuff. Says Wishy Washy. I will. I'll open up a tab right now. Chat, you may not know this about me. But I'm a huge fan, because I started at a young age studying guitar. Anonymous Freak with the 5. This is for the dogs. My Ukrainian coworker recently shared your original video to our work Slack. Appreciate it. Appreciate you. I am pretty good at guitar, as you may or may not know. But when I was learning guitar in my early years, I was really pulled towards music that was more improvisational and technical. And so I actually fell in love with the band, the old jam band Fish. And they've been my go-to favorite band for the last 20 years. Something you may not expect. But yeah, I'm actually going to see Fish in concert next month. I'm excited. TJ York with the $4.99. Chat, I'll remind you, in 45 minutes, you will be once I press end stream here, you will be automatically directed. You don't have to be if you don't want to be, but you will be automatically directed to the gaming channel where we will continue sciencing suspiciously sexy Soviet systems in Atomic Heart. Y'all are loving those streams. We're going to keep doing them. So the dogs are now being damaged more by inbreeding than radiation. This was likely not the case in the early years, though, right? Says TJ York with the $4.99. I don't know. We have no data on dogs from that time period. Do you play any instruments, says 3DJ? I don't want to sound mean, but like, were you listening? You look like a Fish guy. Peace and love. Yeah. Long hair kind of gives it away. Malika Millions says, are higher melanin / darker pigment dogs safer from ill effects? Are there any correlations to melanin found in the study? Curious as melanin is evidence as protective from space radiation. Malika, so dogs have what's to answer your question directly, no. I haven't seen anything about melanin specifically for the dogs, but they do have a layer of fur on them, which will act as a semi-shield to radiation, not gamma radiation, but act as a semi-shield to radiation. So I would guess they would be less detrimental to them than to, say, a frog. But I haven't seen any pigmentation data, no. And I don't know if it's significant. Like, if that's an actual significant factor. I'm not saying you're wrong, I just don't know. It's the most important thing you can say in science. I don't know. It will also help you in your personal life. Learn to say, I don't know, more. It will help. Chef Julie, one of my esteemed professors at the facility, the $9.99. I would be curious to see how different mammal populations in nuclear disasters compare. Would fuel type alter the mutation severity? Yeah, like I said, Chef, it's only they haven't done other mammalian populations in the zone because it's harder to capture them. like a horse. Good luck. Sunday is daylight savings time, says Denizen of the Ages. Ah, fudge. No one likes David's savings time. Get David out of here. Fuel type would alter mutation severity, Chef. It depends, well, like I said, it depends on the fission products released. What is the main contaminant? Cesium-137 has a decently long half-life of 30-ish years, and it's very radioactive. And it's a gamma emitter? Yeah, cesium-137 is a gamma emitter, and gamma being the second most penetrating form of radiation. Now, if these are other fission products, for example, aren't gamma emitters, and so that would be less dangerous, right? In terms of cancer-causing ability. Unless you ingested something like that, and that is another problem in the zone, because wild animals are eating wild stuff. Dylan with the 999 plus 10. Ola, curious if you're excited as I am for the Christopher Nolan Oppenheimer movie. It looks incredible. I am very excited. Christopher Nolan is known for his penchant for sciencey stuff and doing things practically. And the recent trailers I've seen of Oppenheimer, or the BTS behind the scenes stuff of them recreating what the Trinity explosion looked like in 1945, it looks like it's going to be visually stunning, and telling the story of the race to build the first atomic bomb is going to be really good. And what's his name? Cillian Murphy? I forget his name, but he looks perfect. He looks just like him, and he's a great actor. So, yes, I'm very excited for it. Hey, Mr. Hill, did your AI go with you to Chernobyl? Says JD Coot. She's always with me. It's like what I have here at the facility. It's like Elon Musk's Neuralink, except it works and it doesn't kill monkeys. Sydney Fain, what's the one that glows blue? Nothing glows blue. What you're probably thinking of is Cherenkov radiation, which is when a high energy particle moves faster than light does in that medium. So light is slowed down by anything denser than vacuum, and if a high energy particle coming, say, out of a nuclear reactor can go faster than that slowdown speed, then it excites and ionizes the medium. And when that medium relaxes, it releases energy, some energy in the form of photons that happen to be in the blue light spectrum. And why it lines up, why it produces light like that has to do with, it's kind of like a sonic boom, where these perturbations, because it's from a high energy particle moving through a medium, the excitations are coming off from that medium in a certain, from that particle and medium in a certain shape. And then when they all relax, that shape tends to line up all of these releases such that they get amplified into something that you can actually see instead of something random. So it's like how it's always described as like a photon's sonic boom, where all that sound gets lined up in this large pressure wave that sounds like a bang. So Cherenkov radiation is like a bang of light as a tiny high energy jet flies through water or another medium faster than light would. Some astronauts have reported seeing something like Cherenkov radiation in their eyeballs, although that's probably just cosmic radiation hitting the backs of their eyes and activating it. Kyle, can I adopt one of these dogs? No. They were adoptable at one point, but they are not now. Amber Harris says, if you could go back to Chernobyl, would you? Yes. I should say, after we raised, 50 grand for the Clean Futures Fund, which helped do this study, I did propose a partnership between them and myself. So I believe going forward, I may act in some kind of capacity with the CFF, and that will include going back to Chernobyl again one day and seeing the dogs again. And if and when I do that, I will do updates for you. I've always wondered if Cherenkov radiation is a sign that time travel is possible in some way. It's a Cider Rico. No. It would, so when you're, if you're traveling faster than light in a medium, you're still not traveling faster than light in a vacuum. And it's not actually traveling faster than light in the vacuum. It gets really complicated to explain, and to be honest, I forget the actual specifics of it. But it's kind of like an artifact, or kind of like an illusion of relativity, that the thing is actually traveling faster than light. If you could travel faster than light, which you can't, then you could talk to yourself, and you could visit yourself in the past or something like that. But it doesn't seem like the universe allows anything like that kind of thing to happen. Darky, no, actually, I will have a video about what tourists what the effect of a very large tourist population had on the exclusion zone. When I was there, tour buses were everywhere. People were coming in and out, just like I was. And I talked to my tour leaders, who were scientists and engineers, about how the zone had changed after the HBO miniseries came out. And their responses and what we saw there will make that video. What tourism did to a disaster zone. Like, what disaster tourism did to Chernobyl is a good title. Chat, right after this, I'm going to take a 30-minute break to probably put some sushi in my mouth. But right after this, we'll be hopping into the gaming section of the facility and putting in maybe 3 hours into Atomic Heart, a bat-shiz crazy game set in the Soviet Union, an alternate history Soviet Union. So it'll be a perfect palate cleanser, accoutrement to today's stream. And if you've been liking those streams, there's more gleeping and glorping to be had. Do you have a favorite dog? Says Louis Merca. Golden Retrievers are the best boys, I think. What is Chernobyl dog study? Says Morin10. See that little red bar right down there on your video screen? Just bring it all the way back to the beginning, like 40 minutes back, and I'll tell you. You have a favorite Fallout game? It says Donatello Dragon with the 199. I like Fallout 4 more than most people. Thanks, Starkey, for being here. Wonder how the dogs are doing since the war, says Thunderwolf. I will tell you that one of the main sources of food for the dogs of Chernobyl, especially around the power plant, are the tourists who bring them food, and are the power plant workers that give them scraps and food, etc., etc. And so when the war started and Chernobyl was occupied by the invaders, that flow of all that food started, and I have pictures of like starving dogs because that significant food source ran out. But also in part of our fundraiser, I also now know that there will be, if nothing else happens, at least a steady flow of food to dogs in the affected areas. It's on my bucket list to go to Chernobyl just to play with good radiation doggos, says Sydney Fain. I'll tell you, I was there with, like, leading specialists from the U.S., and when they saw the dogs, all that specialist expertise just melted away, and they just became dog people. You're like, okay, now everyone, remember, while we're in the zone, we're not even wearing our own clothes. Don't drink from your water bottles while we're outside. You can't sit down on anything. Make sure you're not putting anything down. And oh my, oh, you're precious. Come here. Oh, look at him. That's basically how it happened. I wouldn't visit Chernobyl anytime soon, with the war going on. And even if I did, I wouldn't tell anybody. Too dangerous. So the doggos in Chernobyl have stronger resistance to radiation, says Armin. Go back and watch the early part of the stream. Jib Steezy with the 199. Have you played Mass Effect? Yes, I have 100%ed every Mass Effect game. One of my favorite series, especially Mass Effect 2. It will be Mass Effect. This Mass Effect series will be on the gaming channel soon. Are we ever going to see magic content from you as videos, says Riff. I do have a magic show that I want to make. I just am already doing enough things. It wouldn't be, let me put it this way. The cost benefit of me totally burning myself out, making a new, basically a new channel and a new series, not worth it just yet. I'm catching your first stream today. Before, I've been watching Office Hours a ton, and a lot of your videos have rekindled my love and interest in learning more science. Thank you for doing what you do, says Ajito A. Ajito, I'm so glad you're here. Chat, we learned a lot about the doggos of Chernobyl today. It seems like, from the first study of the domestic population in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, it seems like the dogs living near the power plant are, in fact, descendants from 1986, descendants from the disaster, and they're genetically distinct enough that going forward we can use this unique and adorable population to learn something about what ambient radiation and gross contamination does to a population. Grisney Games with the 5. Hey Kyle, just wanted to say thank you for the vid a couple years ago about Asperger's. Turns out I was diagnosed as a kid, and knowing now has helped so much. Grisney, it's all about learning more about yourself. There's power in that. There's power in knowing about yourself. There's power in knowing science. There's power in knowing so much science that you can apply science to your favorite video games. Chat, that's what we're going to do next. 30 minutes, we'll be jumping on the gaming channel. You'll be automatically redirected, don't worry, if you want to see that playthrough. But coming up at the facility, exciting news. I think we'll be working with Lionsgate and John Wick 4 for a John Wick episode. Not set yet, but we'll see if we do one. I have another Half-Life Histories coming up. Another Dead Space episode that I had just laying around waiting to be stomped. A lot of fun stuff coming up at the facility. I hope you learned something today. I know I did. And until next time, wherever it is I see you, whether it's back at the facility, which is patreon.com/Kyle Hill, free access. Well, not free access, but you get free access after you pay them, and then you get free access to like the cafeteria. Whether it's back at the facility, whether it's in the comments of this video, the next live stream on the gaming channel, the next main video, next Half-Life Histories, be nice to each other, because this is all we got. I'll see you soon.